God has given each member of the home a specific role to fulfill. As the architect of the home, He is the one who knows how the home will be the most successful. So if we're interested in building according to God's blueprint, we must observe these roles and fulfill them to the very best of our abilities. These roles in the home are not up to our own private interpretations or opinions. Instead, we must recognize that God has carefully assigned each one. As such, every role is crucial to the well-being of the home. The role of the wife and mother is no different. Although we have discussed the fact that the man has been designated by God as the head of the home, perhaps we could say then that the woman is the backbone of the home. Her role, though not the same in authority, is critical to the success of the home. It is sad to see the success then that Satan has had in convincing both men and women that women should seek other roles besides the one God has assigned. The results have truly been devastating. You see, Satan is trying to convince men and women that God's roles for women are old-fashioned and out of date, oppressive and demeaning. Thus, as Satan succeeds in this regard, he succeeds in pulling homes into chaos and danger. So we must consider then the true value and beauty of a virtuous woman fulfilling her God-given role in the home. Not only will this be in the best interest of her soul and her family, but it will also be the only role that will lead her to experience the greatest fulfillment in life. In Proverbs chapter 31 and verses 10 through 31, it provides all women a God-given model to emulate in the home. But before we study the description of this woman, I want to make two observations. First, this passage records advice that a mother gave to her son, who is either king or would become king, Proverbs 31 verse 1. So men should look to this passage as advice for what they ought to look for in a wife. Second, this is not some superwoman standard that cannot be achieved by women today, or else this passage would be useless advice to a son who is seeking a wife. Instead, all women today can demonstrate the same level of virtue, diligence, and care that this woman demonstrated toward her family. So let's get started in this passage and look at verse 10. It says, "Who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies." Here is a woman of strength, courage, and excellence. She demonstrates this excellence in every area of her life, in her marriage, in her work as a mother, etc. As we'll see, this woman always works diligently for the good of her family. And the question, who can find a virtuous wife, does not imply that she cannot be found. Rather, it implies that she is rare and extremely valuable, far above rubies, the text says. She is diligent and passionate about everything that she does. She excels. She is far from mediocre as a wife and mother. And therefore, as we'll see later, this is a woman who will be praised. Verse 11 then says, "The heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain." Trust is an essential part of any successful home. Every member should have confidence that all the others are acting in the best interest of the family. The virtuous woman does this. Wives are often left to take care of the most important physical things that their husbands have. Her responsibilities include taking care of his physical needs, such as preparing his meals and his clothes, taking care of his children and tending to their needs, managing household affairs, etc. In addition to this, there is no one who should share a greater emotional bond with her husband than her. And thus, she holds his secrets, his fears, his anxieties, his insecurities, etc. But this woman has proved herself to be so worthy of her husband's trust that he never has to concern himself with any of these things that have been entrusted to her. He knows that gain will be experienced in everything that his wife touches. And then verse 12 says, "She does him good and not evil all the days of her life." Since she has proven herself to be excellent and trustworthy, his heart is assured that she will be working for the good of the home in everything that she does. He's not concerned about her making decisions that undermine the well-being of his family. She prospers in the things that she does and provides peace of mind to her husband that is invaluable to him. She never takes a day off, so to speak, from working for the good of her family. Verse 13 says she seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. Notice that this woman has a knowledge of how to take care of her family. She seeks out the things that she needs, like wool and flax, likely so she can prepare clothing for her family. But she's not just knowledgeable about how to do the task that her family needs her to do. She's also a willing worker. This woman is proven to be a hard worker through this passage. Here she's seen putting her knowledge to work to take care of her family's needs. And then verse 14 says, she's like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She seeks out the things that her family needs and enjoys to the best of her ability. Like merchant ships, she is willing to go to great lengths to accomplish this work. Perhaps this even shows her industrious nature in being willing to make trades in order to give her family the things that she could not otherwise provide them. Again, the good of her family is her focus. Verse 15, she also rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. The fact that this virtuous wife had maidservants does not discount her diligence in her work. Actually, it enhances it. Notice that even though she had maidservants, she is the one who is rising while it is yet night, before daybreak, we might say, in order to make sure that her household and maidservants have everything they need for the day. And therefore, this woman is not a lazy woman who stays in bed while her family is up. Instead, she sees the need to rise early and make the necessary provisions for the day. Verse 16, she considers a field and buys it. From her profits she plants a vineyard. She is a woman of common sense and wisdom. Notice that she considers the field rather than acting rashly. She surely wants to make certain that it will be in the best interest of her family. She is industrious. Notice that it is from her own profit that she plants a vineyard, and therefore she's not laying any undue burden upon the family because of her decisions. Instead, she is demonstrating such care in everything that she does that she is causing her family to prosper. Verse 17, she girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. Although the Bible teaches husbands to show honor to their wives as to the weaker vessels, 1 Peter 3 and verse 7, this does not mean that women are so feeble they cannot work. Here's an excellent example of a woman who's not afraid of doing some hard work. Although husbands should recognize the physical limitations of their wives, wives should be diligent in doing whatever they're capable of doing to benefit the family. Notice also that she works to do even more in the future. Notice that it says she strengthens her arms, for she recognizes that her family is depending on her accomplishing her work. And in verse 18, she perceives that her merchandise is good, and her lamp does not go out by night. She sees the profit in her work. She does not sell herself short on what she has been working to accomplish, and her diligence does not end when the sun goes down. Instead, she's even diligent in caring for her family into the night hours. Perhaps we would even say that this woman is always on call. She's never truly off, because she's always ready to respond to any need of her family. Verse 19, she stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hand holds the spindle. Here's another picture of this woman's diligence in working to provide for her family. She's industrious, not just to buy the things that her family needs, but to work to provide for them. She has the knowledge of how to keep the home and to see to it that the needs of her family are met to the best of her ability. Verse 20, she extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. She's not a selfish woman. And she's not just concerned about the needs of her own family. She has a heart of compassion like Jesus and wants to help those who are less fortunate than she and her family. And therefore, she tries to do whatever is within her ability to help others. In doing so, she will certainly be teaching her family the value of caring for others, according to God's command in Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. And thus, when she recognizes the truth of Jesus' teaching, that it is more blessed to give than to receive, Acts 20, verse 35. In verse 21, it says she's not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. She's not afraid of the challenging circumstances, like of winter, that lie ahead because she has made diligent preparations for them. Neither she or her family will be caught unprepared because she has been working toward this goal to see that her family is properly equipped to face the challenges as best she can, for instance, with the proper clothing. So her foresight has saved her family from potential struggles and disaster. Verse 22 says that she makes tapestry for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Here's another picture of this woman's industrious nature. Notice that she makes these things for herself. So it's not that she, her family, and her home does not have nice things, but she's willing to work for them. Although her focus must not be on having fancy things, as you might see in 1 Timothy 2, verses 9 and 10, and 1 Peter 3, verses 1 through 6, she's well dressed. Verse 23 says her husband is known in the gates, when he sits among the elders of the land. Her husband is in a place of honor and respect among the people. The context implies that this is aided by having such a good companion in his wife. Certainly, such an excellent wife has played an important role in her husband's success, and because she does such an excellent job at caring for the things that have been entrusted to her, his heart can safely trust in the job that she does, and he can focus on the work that he needs to do, such as to support his family, to work for the Lord, etc. Furthermore, there is nothing about his wife's conduct that would take away from the respect and honor that he has. Verse 24 says she makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies sashes for the merchants. This woman put the skills that she had to work in order to make a profit for her family. Using skills that she already possessed in taking care of her family, she made extra income for her family. Please note that in doing this, there's no indication that she left any of her other responsibilities undone. In fact, nothing about her work took her away from her family. It only enhanced her contribution to the family. Verse 25 says, strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. Whenever she considers the future, she can look to it with joy and anticipation. The reason she can do this is because of how she has conducted her life in the past. Nothing in how she has conducted herself will cause her or her family to reap harmful effects. Instead, because of her wisdom, her good stewardship, and godliness, there is only the expectation of good in the future for both herself and her family. Verse 26, she opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. First, she possesses wisdom and kindness herself. She works to learn and live according to the wisdom that comes from God, and she treats everyone with respect. And then she works to teach others these same ways. So she does not give bad advice to others, and she is certainly working diligently to teach these things to her children. Verse 27, she watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. This woman recognizes that the care of her household is a primary responsibility in her life, and she does not face this responsibility with dread, but embraces it and tries to take full advantage of it. She is not a lazy housewife by any means. Everything that has depicted her in this passage is such that she is a diligent and industrious worker who always looks out for the best interest of her family. Verse 28 says, Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Her diligent and loving care for her family does not go unnoticed. Although she does not do it for the praise, those who are in her household appreciate the diligent work that she does for them. Her children recognize the love of their mother when they're young and develop a greater appreciation for her as they get older, and her husband praises her for her works. So godly husbands and children appreciate and praise this virtuous woman. They do not make her feel like a piece of property or take advantage of her or belittle her contribution. Instead, they recognize how important she really is to the well-being of the home. In verse 29, it says, "Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all." The husband of this virtuous woman recognizes her true worth to him and his family. Although many women do well in their roles, he recognizes that his wife has excelled above every one of them. She has acted with such excellence and virtue in the interest of her family that everyone has prospered in so many ways. In verse 30, it says, "Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised." Although this woman may have been beautiful from a physical perspective, she was so much more. Physical charm often deceives people and external beauty fades away, but this woman fears God and lives in obedience to Him. This is why she has acted with such excellence in caring for her family. And although the world puts its focus on physical beauty and charm, it is this virtuous woman who is worthy of praise. In verse 31, it says, "Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates." No one has to make this woman look good to be appreciated. Instead, this woman's work and loving care for her family have been apparent to everyone who has observed her. And therefore the fruit of her own work will cause others to praise her for her diligence in serving the Lord and her family. Although this virtuous woman is found in the Old Testament, it remains unchanged as God's inspired picture of a woman who is to be praised. Unfortunately, many will dismiss this picture of the virtuous woman as being an impossible fantasy. Yet all that we have observed is a woman with a deep commitment to please God and work in the best interest of her family. She is industrious and works hard to do this important work, and therefore any and every woman is capable of setting her mind on being this virtuous woman. Well, now, up to this point, we've been discussing a model that all wives and mothers would do well to emulate. Now we want to get specific as to the roles God has assigned them in the home. Certainly, virtuous women will live in the fear of God and do the very best to fulfill their God-given responsibilities. Specifically, we want to focus on the God-given role of the virtuous woman as wife before we think about her as mother. First, she is to live as a helpmeet. Whenever Adam was alone in the Garden of Eden, God saw that it was not a good situation and made a helper comparable to him. Genesis 2, verse 18. The King James Version says, a helpmeet for him. So it is a fitting observation to recognize that men were not created for women, but women for men. God expects and desires for wives to provide suitable companionship and help to their husbands. She will do this only if she fulfills her God-given role in the home. Perhaps most of all, fulfilling this responsibility will require a time commitment, as she will be unable to be a suitable helper without committing time to her husband. A wife has the great and unparalleled opportunity to either do a great amount of good for her husband or a great amount of harm to him. Listen to this reflected in the book of Proverbs. In Proverbs 12 and verse 4, it says, "An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who causes shame is like rottenness in his bones." Proverbs 18 verse 22 says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord." Proverbs 11 verse 22 says, "As a ring of gold in a swine's snout, so is a lovely woman who lacks discretion." Proverbs 14 and verse 1 says, "The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish woman pulls it down with her hands." Proverbs 21 verse 9 says, "Better to dwell in a corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a contentious woman." Proverbs 27 verses 15 and 16 says, "A continual dripping on a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. Whoever restrains her restrains the wind and grasps oil with his right hand." Clearly, either a wife will fulfill her God-intended role as a suitable helper for her husband or be a hindrance to him. Next, she must love him. As we discussed in Lesson 2, God expects love to be shown in every aspect of the home. This is no less true about the wife's responsibility to love her husband. In fact, she should be committed to learning from older women how she should love her husband, Titus 2 verse 4. This goes far beyond saying, "I love you," and expressing romantic feelings. The love that a wife must have for her husband is that she always acts in his best interest. So she is aware of his needs, whether physical, emotional, spiritual, etc. She's not focused on her own selfish desires and pursuits in life. Instead, as a suitable helper for him, she always conducts herself in a way that is good and beneficial for him, whether he recognizes and appreciates it or not. Next, she must live in submission. Many in the world today will not like this point. Yet God instructs women to be in submission to their husbands. Titus 2 in verse 5 says that the older women should train the younger women to be obedient to their own husbands. Ephesians 5 verses 22 through 24 says, "Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is head of the wife, as also Christ is head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything." Colossians 3 and verse 18 says, "Wives, submit to your own husbands, as is fitting in the Lord." 1 Peter chapter 3 verses 1 through 6 says, "Wives likewise be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, they without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives, when they observe your chaste conduct, accompanied by fear. Do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on fine apparel. Rather, let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. For in this manner, in former times, the holy women who trusted in God also adorned themselves, being submissive to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are, if you do good and are not afraid with any terror." Wives are daughters of Sarah, the faithful daughter of God and wife of Abraham, if they will be submissive to their husbands. To submit is to yield to the will or desires of another. It is to be obedient to another. So whenever there are differing opinions in the home, God has given the wife responsibility to yield her opinions and judgments to her husband, who is the leader of the family. And notice that this is not just her responsibility whenever her husband makes the decision that she wants him to make. Instead, Ephesians 5 verses 22 through 24 gives her this responsibility toward her husband in everything, as the church submits to Christ. Recognize that there must not be two heads of the home. Unfortunately, husbands do not always provide their wives with the proper leadership, and they use this commandment to their own selfish advantages. Still, this does not change the wife's responsibility. Ultimately, she keeps this commandment in order to please the Lord, even if it means that she will not be treated well by her husband. There is only one exception that God has given to this submission. Remember that she is taught to submit to her own husband as is fitting in the Lord. Colossians 3, verse 18. So if there is ever anything that her husband demands from her that causes her to violate his commands or her role in the home, including her conscience, she must choose to obey God rather than men. Acts 5, verse 29. Next, she must show respect. In submitting to her husband, she does not show spite or contempt for God's arrangement of the home. Instead, she is careful to show respect to her husband as the God-appointed head of the home. Ephesians 5 and verse 33 says, "Nevertheless, let each one of you, in particular, so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband." So she must not be going behind her husband's back and acting contrary to his authority. She must not be putting him down in front of others. She must not always be second-guessing his decisions. Instead, she must treat him with the respect that is due to the one God has given authority. Now, this certainly does not mean that she must always agree with her husband. However, just as Christians have the responsibility to submit to and respect the governing authorities and elders of the church, even though they might not agree with their judgments, as you might see Romans 13, verses 1 through 7, and Hebrews 13, verse 17. Christian wives must respect to and submit their husbands as long as they do not cause their wives to violate God's will. Ultimately, a Christian wife's respect for her husband's authority should stem from her respect for the Lord's authority. Next, she is to be a keeper of the home. There has been a great shift in culture over the past several decades, one that shows no signs of slowing. Today, most wives and mothers decide that they should most women decide that they should get college educations and or enter the workforce full-time in order to be the primary provider for the family or provide additional income to support their family's standard of living. It is considered old-fashioned for women to be homemakers. Yet this is exactly what God expects of wives. Titus chapter 2 and verse 4 again teaches that the older women are to teach the younger women to be homemakers. The idea is that they are to have the rule over the domestic affairs of the home. So God gives wives specific responsibility to keep the home. And therefore, the idea of women cooking for their husbands, cleaning the house, doing laundry, etc., is not out of date for Christian wives. Instead, it is a key part of their God-given responsibilities as wives. But what about a woman who takes a secular job outside of the home? Sometimes this is done out of necessity. Maybe it's her husband cannot find work, or her husband is disabled, or her husband is unwilling to work, or she is widowed, etc. Sometimes situations demand it. But there are many situations in which wives choose to work, not to meet actual needs, but to have nicer things, or out of the joy of pursuing a career, or because she just desires to get away from the home, etc. To these, we must simply recognize that while there are many biblical examples of women working, the Proverbs 31 woman, Lydia, Priscilla, etc., there are no approved Bible examples of women working at the expense of fulfilling their roles as homemakers. Surely Christian women as well as men must recognize that being homemakers according to God's standards is a full-time responsibility that is full of blessings and fulfillment, and one that should not be quickly dismissed in pursuit of secular employment. Now, in addition to these responsibilities God has given to a Christian woman as wife, those who want to please God must also recognize their responsibilities as mothers. Certainly, a woman who is committed to excellence in the service of God and her family will do the very best she can to fulfill these roles. So first, she bears children. When addressing younger widows, Paul wrote, "Therefore I desire that the younger widows marry, bear children, manage the house, Give no opportunity to the adversary to speak reproachfully. 1 Timothy 5, verse 14. Having children is uniquely a role that only women are capable of fulfilling, and this is one of their highest callings in life, as well as one of the most fulfilling. Although God does not look in despair or with despair upon women who are unable to bear children, Christian wives should consider the opportunity to do so a great privilege. But God does not just want women to bear children. Instead, He cares about how women will treat these children once they are born. He expects mothers to care for the welfare of their children, tend to their needs, etc. Just like we saw with regard to husbands, this will require a great time commitment from women to take care of their children in a way that would please God. Next, she must love them. Just as Christian women must be trained to love their husbands, they also must be trained to love their children, Titus 2, verse 4. Once again, they must always act in the best interest of their children, physically, emotionally, spiritually, etc. They must not be seeking their own selfish desires and ambitions above the well-being of their children. While their children are very young, this loving care certainly includes feeding them, changing them, holding them, etc. But as their children grow, this also includes teaching them how to function in society and behave in a way that would please God. Of course, what Christian mothers should love most about their children is their souls. Therefore, they should not do anything to jeopardize the spiritual well-being of their children. Next, she must train them. Although the father takes the lead in training, mothers have a great role. In fact, it will be the mother who implements much of the father's training. After all, she is, as homemaker, the ruler of the household domestic affairs. This includes dealing with children throughout the day, as their father may be away. So she also must be committed to following God's blueprint for raising children. Listen to Proverbs 22 and verse 6 again, as we read in Lesson 4. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. This training will take time and requires three elements: a proper example, teaching, and discipline. It should be a tremendous comfort to husbands, or to a husband, to know that while he works, his wife is committed to training his children in the way they ought to go. A primary focus of her training ought to be spiritual. Remember, the virtuous woman fears the Lord, Proverbs 31, verse 30. And therefore she desperately desires to pass her knowledge of God's word and the fear of the Lord on to her children. For instance, Paul said that from childhood, Timothy had known the Scriptures, which were able to make him wise for salvation through faith which is in Jesus Christ, 2 Timothy 3, verse 15. Earlier in the letter, Paul acknowledged that this was due to the fact that his grandmother, Lois, and mother, Eunice, passed on their faith to him, 2 Timothy 1 and verse 5. Next, she must keep the home. Being a keeper of the home, or the ruler of the domestic household affairs, is not just applicable to how the wife treats her husband, but also to her children. Again, Titus 2, verses 4 and 5. Again, 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 14 says that younger widows were to remarry and bear children and manage the house. This is even more of a full-time responsibility than just taking care of a husband. Christian mothers should make sure that their houses are in order, like things are in their places. The vacuum cleaner is run. They should make sure meals are prepared for the well-being of their children. Clean clothes are ready. Broken things are mended. The dirty dishes are cleaned and put away. Schoolwork is done well, etc. After all, Christian mothers should recognize that their example is also working to train their daughters how to manage the home and shows their sons what to look for in a future wife. Furthermore, mothers need to be around the home in order to make sure that their children are behaving properly throughout the day. It's sad that many mothers choose to neglect these responsibilities and leave their children to take care of themselves, to watch themselves. We often call these latchkey children, or to be entrusted to the care of another. Mothers, please know that your children need you around the house, whether they know it or not. There is no substitute for a mother who manages the house well. Wives and mothers have been given an extremely important and valuable role to fulfill in the home. Although this role is often frowned upon by the world, the negative effects of wives and mothers failing to fulfill their God-given roles as virtuous women are felt every day in the majority of homes in this world. The consequences of failing in this role are too severe, and the benefits of fulfilling this role are too great to neglect. So God is searching for women who will commit themselves to rising above the standards set by the world and humble themselves before Him in order to do His work for their families.